The defense may bend, but must always contain. It must never break. Stance, attack, recognize, neutralize, escape, pursue, and tackle. Defensive line play, like everything else in football, begins with the basics. And this is the basic look of the front four, with the ends positioned on the line, with the tackles playing off the ball. The front line is concave. We play our defensive tackles off the ball approximately 18 inches. This is particularly true on 1st and 10, 2nd and long, and 3rd and long yardage. Of course, on short yardage, they've got to come up on the ball to stop the play for whatever yardage is necessary. I'm talking about 3rd and 1, 3rd and a half, 3rd and 2. They'll come up on the ball. And the reason we play them off the ball is that inside here, where the quarters are close, they have a little bit more room in which to react to the actions of the men they're playing over, in this particular case, the offensive guards. Also, another reason is that by being off the ball, they make it more difficult for the center, for example, to get a good block upon the middle linebacker. For example, on an inside charge here, with the quarterback key and the fullback, with an inside charge by this man, the middle linebacker, if the fullback goes to this side, comes right off his tail into this hole. It's almost an impossible block for the middle linebacker, for the center to make on the middle linebacker in that particular case. And the same thing is true on the opposite side, with an inside charge here, with the fullback coming to the weak side. If that's the middleman's key, he comes off the tail of this particular defensive tackle, again making it most difficult for the center to get to the middle linebacker. The defensive ends are positioned up on the line about on the outside shoulder of the offensive tackles in order to gain contact with those tackles as quickly as possible. And here's how that front line looks in the game. The ends are on the line. The tackles are 18 inches off, which gives them room to maneuver and also time to recognize the trap. And now let's go on to the fundamentals and technique of defensive line play. Once again, it all begins with stance. The stance of all defensive linemen is the three-point, but less of a sprinter stance than that of the offensive lineman. The defensive man also has more weight on his hand because although the offensive man may have to pull, the defensive man's first move is usually straight ahead, or at the most, at a slight angle. On the initial charge, as the defensive lineman is head up, drives out of that stance, he must keep his feet under him and moving. All of the power of his charge starts with his legs. Against running play blocks and on his initial charge, the defensive lineman must control the offensive man. To break that man's charge and then move him, he must first raise him. And to do this, the defensive lineman employs a shoulder and forearm charge. Defensive linemen who are exceptionally strong in the arms and in the hands may use a hand charge. However, in the shoulder and forearm charge, the arm, fist gripped, is brought forward from the set position, and as a defensive lineman hits, he lifts. The offensive blocker's chest will be the target, and on contact, the defensive man gets that forearm across and underneath, and then lifts. The shoulder and forearm used depends upon the lineman's responsibility. If the lineman's responsibility is to his left, he uses his right shoulder and forearm, leaving his left arm free in case the back is already into that hole. If his responsibility is to his right, he leads with his right foot and uses his left shoulder and forearm. This leaves his right arm free. As soon as the defensive man has broken the offensive man's initial charge, and as soon as he has raised his opponent, the defensive man's hands are brought into play because he must immediately shed his man. If the pressure on the defensive man is from his right, for example, with the Y end driving down, he must fight out into that pressure. If the pressure upon a defensive man is to his left, to his inside, as we look at this defensive end, from the tackle, for example, he must fight into that pressure. He must never, under any circumstances, go around the block. Under any circumstances. If this man were trying to drive him down, he goes around the block, the player's gone. What he has to do is fight into the pressure of the block, to go across the face of the block if it is absolutely possible. Right across the face of the block. If the tackle's driving out, he fights into the face and tries to get across of that block. If he is taken, in other words, if the offensive man has the angle on him, his next best move is to spin out of the block, staying low and hard to try to get out into the path of the ball carrier. If, however, the blocker has position on him, the defensive lineman may spin off the block, if that's the only way he can get free in time to get in on the play. He must, of course, first break the blocker's initial charge and then roll toward the play and never away from it. In spinning, the inexperienced player has a tendency to stand up. If he does, the blocker will run him out. He must spin low and continue to spin low to the hole. Remember, if he does not first drive out low to break the offensive man's charge and then spin low, he'll find himself in this position. In a few moments, we're going to discuss all of the tackles and all of the ends keys, but now let's consider the tackle's reactions to the draw play and to the quick trap. Against the draw, some teams may hold someone off to play the draw, but it's not absolutely necessary. Actually, the tackles are expected to read draw. When a quarterback, or when the offensive lineman playing over the defensive tackles in this particular case, setters on pass, the first reaction of the defensive man is to rush the passer. He keeps his eyes on the quarterback. And as he's rushing the passer, he's got to be conscious of any remaining backs that are in the backfield. Now, he penetrates, and then the good experienced tackle will feel the offensive lineman trying to turn him, which is an unnatural move, an unnatural position by the offensive lineman. He will feel that. He will feel the offensive lineman trying to get an inside position or an outside position to give him an alley. He wants penetration. A good man feels that. It comes with experience. Inexperienced teams must keep someone back to play the draw. In playing a quick trap, that's the reason we keep the tackles off the line, so they can react to the trap. For example, as this man pulls, the first thing he should think of is trap. As this man pulls, trap. This man can't fight the trap. No way he can fight the trap. He's penetrating. He's going in here. If the trap is this way, for example, with him blocking back and this man coming across to play the trap, this man is dead. He can't play the trap. There's no way that he can. He can play the trap late, but here's the man that must stop the trap. With the pull, he thinks trap right now, so he fights right through the center to nullify the center's block, to drive the center into the area in which the trap man or which the runner is trying to run. Up to now, we've discussed the tackle's responsibility against the run. They also have a major responsibility to get to that passer, as here. That is why in a passing situation, the defensive tackles move up on the ball rather than stay the 18 inches off it. Defensive tackles on the pass rush have a much smaller area in which to defeat their blockers than do the defensive ends. So they must beat them on the line of scrimmage, or as close to it as possible. In defeating that man, once contact is made, feet and hands are 90% of the battle. Other things being equal, the man who moves his feet most effectively will win this battle. Watch the feet. On the pass rush, it is most important for all of the defensive linemen to move on the snap of the ball so that, when possible, they can beat the offensive men to their pass set. Remember, the defensive lineman has a license to use those hands. Watch here the quick low charge by the defensive tackle and the use of his hands. The stance of the defensive end is slightly narrower, more of a sprinter stance than that of the defensive tackle. The defensive ends are the primary pass rushers, and the narrower stance permits them to move more quickly on the snap of the ball and to move better to either side. The end should remember that when the tackle opposite him sets the pass block, he must concentrate on that tackle, on that initial charge. Then he immediately looks at the quarterback as his legs, feet, hands, and head get him there. Observe the concentration here. And observe once more how the defensive man uses those hands. Watch that same end here in the game. His quick charge takes him to his opponent before that man can get set. His hands discard the opponent, and the path to the quarterback is open. A defensive lineman must never become stereotyped in his rush. However, one perfected move with a counter is all he will need to go with such change-ups as blitzes and twists. Up to now, we have seen the defensive end only in an outside rush. Let's look at an inside move and analyze it. As in all pass rushing maneuvers, success is based on the quickness of the charge and the ability of the man to disguise his intent. In slow motion, watch how the rusher makes a hard charge to the outside to set up the blocker for the inside move. And what you perfect on the practice field, you put to use in the game. The successful pass rush is dependent upon, 1, anticipation and quick recognition of a pass. 2, quickness and decisiveness in the initial move. And 3, the coordination of hands, of feet, and head with the shoulders forward to prevent the blocker from getting underneath the pass rusher. And I think, too, it's important to remember that in driving for the passer, the pass rusher must keep his eyes on the passer. Squeeze the passer's area of operation. Force him closer to another pass rusher. 4, do not give him time to find a secondary receiver. 5, force him out of his roost, out of the pocket, in other words, and force him to throw on the move or force him to run. And I think, of course, it's very important that if you have not reached the passer, if you can't get to him, get your hands up. Get your hands up as he starts to throw to force the elevation of the ball, to force the elevation of the ball higher. To bat the ball down or make him pull it down and run with it. In other words, make that passer lose confidence in his pass protection. Demoralize him and his team with him. Defensive linemen, tackles, and ends have certain keys, as do all defensive people. Linebackers have certain keys that they must read. Defensive backs have certain keys that they must read. The defensive linemen, for example, the tackles, their key, as for the defensive end, when their man sets for a pass, they know right now it's pass. So they make their initial move against the offensive people and then look to the quarterback. As I mentioned before, if the guard with a pull away across the back of the center, the first thing is, that's a key to that tackle. The first thing he's looking for is to fight the trap. If the tackle were to pull out here, this man would go right out with him, looking to play the pitch out. These are what we mean by defensive keys. If this man were to block down on him, that's a key to him. That means the player's coming to the outside, therefore he's got to fight across the face of the blocker or the spin out to get into the runner's path. Same thing here. If this man were to fight him out, he fights in. If this man would try to hook him, contain, that means it's an outside play. He fights the hook block and then comes out into the pursuit angle. This is what we mean by defensive keys. And now, I want to talk about containment. But first, I want you to see it in the game. Watch those ends, 82 and 87, as they keep that quarterback from getting outside the contain area and force him into the heavy going. If you remember, when we were speaking about the overall defense, we said that the defense must bend, must never break, and it must always contain. Every defense must have a defensive perimeter, must have a perimeter in which the actual defense contains the offense within that perimeter. And there should be a contained man on the strong side to the flanker side, and there must be a contained man on the weak side or a side away from the flanker. And the men who are the contained men will vary. For example, if on the weak side, if the defensive end has the outside responsibility, then he must contain. He must keep everything inside of him. He must make sure there's no reverse coming back. He must make sure that the quarterback in pulling down a ball doesn't get outside that defensive perimeter. The linebacker, this frees the linebacker to go off into pursuit. If the defensive linebacker is the contained man, that leaves the end to go off into pursuit. Now he has to sit here either outside, somewhere in some area, so he can contain the offensive team within that. If the play would have come this way to the weak side and the halfback was the force man, he would be the contained man. Sometimes the safety is the force man. He would be the contained man. He keeps the offense within himself, inside of him. The same thing is true on the strong side, either with the halfback or with the safety man, depending upon who is forcing the play. And now let's go to another board and another facet of defensive line play. One of the major developments in defensive football has been the tackle and end twists. And this is used on passing downs. One method of using is to send a tackle first across the face of the offensive tackle. And the defensive end, by taking a drop step, coming right up through the center in order to rush the passer. Now, the purpose of that, of course, is obvious, I believe. When the defensive tackle drives this way, he draws the block of the offensive guard. The defensive end first makes a slight move into the offensive tackle to draw his block, and then drop steps and comes through here. Usually what happens, these two men, in trying to get to their particular people, knock each other off, and it usually frees the defensive end for an uncluttered pass rush at the quarterback. Of course, the responsibility of the tackle now is still to contain out here. On the practice field, let's watch the twist with the defensive tackle, 73 in white, going first, and the end 87 in white, cutting behind him. Note how the defensive tackle's charge ties up both blockers, and the defensive end is by them before they can recover. Again, note how this maneuver opens up the inside alley to the quarterback. Another version of the tackle and end twist is this time to send the defensive end first rather than the defensive tackle. This time, the defensive end comes across the inside shoulder of the offensive guard, and the tackle takes a drop step, first attempting to draw the block of the guard, then taking a drop step and rushing the passer from this area. This can be very, very disconcerting to blockers. There's only one way to combat this, really, and they have to be well versed in recognizing this and recognize this particular stunt so that they can leave them go and then block more or less areas in here on both sides. In other words, what they do is actually switch assignments. On the practice field again, but this time the defensive end, 87 in white, charges across the face of the tackle toward the guard. And the defensive tackle, number 73 in white, cuts behind him. Note the tackle as he makes a fake step at the guard with his right foot to freeze that man, allowing the end to bring his man, the offensive tackle, into the guard. Here we have a double twist, with both ends going first, and the tackles cutting behind them. Note how the blocking breaks down, proving how disconcerting the twist can be. The same technique may be used by the two interior defensive linemen, the tackles. In this illustration, when the middle linebacker is not blitzing, the defensive tackle who goes first must get to and cut off the center so that he cannot pick up the second man through. In this second view, note how the first tackle's charge accomplishes this. When the middle linebacker, 89 in white, is part of the tackle twist, and his charge takes the center into one of the guards, the path is really open for the cutting tackle. Here it is again with the linebacker. Defense is play recognition, pursuit, and containment. Play recognition, of course, is seeing the same play over and over again, and by seeing it, of course, you become aware of it and you become used to playing against it. Containment is to keep everything contained for the pursuit to attack it. Pursuit, however, is the heart of a defense. Pursuit is a man's responsibility. Pursuit is dedication. Pursuit is persistence. It's getting to the ball carrier on the shortest course, taking the proper angle, and when you get there in an angry mood. For example, on a play that's going wide to this side, the first responsibility of the defensive end on that side is to fight the block and then come out on a flat angle, trying to keep that play inside. The contained man now, of course, is the halfback. He's going to drive everything back. This man, depending upon his responsibility, this man first, as he strikes his blow and he sees the play develop, he comes out on this angle. The next man over, which is the defensive tackle, as he strikes his blow, he comes out in a pursuit angle here. These two men, one of whom must be the contained man. And of course, that is made up beforehand, who is the contained. If the defensive end is the contained, he will contain the play so no reverses, the quarterback can't roll out, and this becomes the last pursuit man, and he will pursue in this angle. If the linebacker is the contained man, then he will contain. And the defensive end, as he strikes his blow, will come out in this angle on a pursuit angle. This man drives it back in the pursuit angle, or the pursuit people pick it off. And of course, you always have this man who is more or less free. For example, on an inside charge and a play started this way, he would hit this hole. If the play started the other way, of course, he would hit this hole. He is not in the pursuit as much as the defensive linemen are. Here in the game, you can see the effectiveness of pursuit. Pursuit is every man's responsibility, and that responsibility does not end until the play is stopped, until that whistle blows. And when that whistle blows, and that pursuit has been good, you can count your colors. The end of all defensive effort against every running play and every completed pass is, of course, the tackle. As the offensive lineman is taught to drive through his opponent with his block, the defensive man must learn to drive through the ball carrier with his tackle. Tackling begins with the basic football position. Feet spread, eyes on the opponent. The tackle must drive through the opponent, feet pumping, and lift. And those are the 8 pillars of defensive line play. Stance, attack, recognize, neutralize, escape, contain, pursue, and tackle.